Maybe some of you have heard about the three sisters. Maybe not. Every Thanksgiving, I think of the three sisters, this story. Not really the dinner with pilgrims and Indians, as most of us were taught in school, but I think of the food at the gatherings we have today. It's a huge part of our celebration, isn't it? I was at a training session last week. The group that provided the training was Faith in Florida. We were talking about the rise of white Christian nationalism. Not the rise of whites, not the rights of Christians, not the rights of patriots, but when they all come together in the name of Jesus for all of the reasons that I don't think Jesus' original teachings would have supported. So, at the beginning of the gathering, the icebreaker was find somebody who passed out little green, little red, little blue, little yellow papers. And then the facilitator said, okay, go find somebody and trade your paper. But before you do, tell the person what your favorite Thanksgiving favorite Thanksgiving food is. And so after we all did the activity and sat down, do you know what the number one favorite food? I want to pause and say thank you, Unity people, for joining us. I know that you gather at 11 o'clock. We're glad you were with us today. Yeah. Guess what it was? Anybody want to guess what the favorite food at Thanksgiving is? Potatoes, dressing, somebody said. Pumpkin pie, still, all of these, right? I would have guessed. Pecan pie. Pecan pie. And then there was a lot of discussion about it's not dressing, it's stuffing. North, south, yeah. Consider the word pecan, fruit of the tree known as the pecan hickory. Comes to English from the indigenous languages. This is from braiding sweetgrass. Pecan is a nut, any nut, really. The hickories, black walnuts, and butternuts of our northern homelands have their own specific names, but those trees, like the homelands, were lost to my people, said Dr. Barbara Kimmerer. Our lands around Lake Michigan were wanted by settlers, so in long lines, surrounded by soldiers, we were marched at gunpoint along what became known as the Trail of Death. They took us to a new place, far from our lakes and forests. But someone wanted that land too, so the bedrolls were packed up again, thinner this time. In the span of a single generation, my ancestors were removed 3 times. Wisconsin to Kansas, points in between, and then to Oklahoma. I wonder if they looked back for a last glimpse of the lakes glimmering like a mirage. Did they touch the trees in remembrance as they became fewer and fewer until there was only grass? So much was scattered and left along that trail. Graves of half the people, language, knowledge, names. My great-grandmother Charlotte, which means wind blowing through, was renamed Charlotte because names the soldiers or the missionaries could not pronounce were not permitted, so we got new names. When they got to Kansas, they must have been relieved to find groves of nut trees along the rivers, a type unknown to them but delicious and plentiful. Without a name for this new food, they just called them, those nuts, pecan, which became pecan in English. This is braiding sweetgrass. I'm going to correct. The name is Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer. Now, if you go to Mississippi, it may not be pecan. Anybody here can guess what it was? Pecan. That's right, another one. Braiding sweetgrass is an anthem of love for both the earth and her wonders, as well as the early people who were here, born on these lands before the arrival of the Spaniards or the early Europeans. Every element of nature was revered, part of a ritual of praise even. Do you know why the Three Sisters was popular? It was about using land wisely. The corn goes up, the bean is planted to crawl upon the corn, and the squash goes out. So you need less amount of land to plant 3 different foods. Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer, who wrote Braiding Sweetgrass, is a mother, a scientist, a decorated professor, and enrolled member of the Citizen Potawatomi Nation. Braiding Sweetgrass is a beautiful, beautiful book. For tens of thousands of years, cultures, she said, developed in close attunement with the elemental energies of the cosmos. The Chinese recognized the 5 primal elements: fire, earth, metal, water, and wood. The Native Americans included sacred sound, while the ancient Greeks identified the 4 energies of earth, fire, water, air. These were not simply ideas or metaphors. Their power was experienced as real. Rivers and mountains, fire, hurricanes, lightning, all spoke of the grandeur of the universe and the importance of living in right relation with these elemental forces. To stay in touch with this power, it was common to celebrate or pray to these basic elements. This is a Yukot Indian prayer. My words are tied in one with the great mountains, with the great rocks, with the great trees, in one with my body and my heart. Living in Florida, we might add, my words are tied in one with the Everglades, with the canals and the rivers, with the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico. Although we try to avoid the heat and stay in air-conditioned rooms, we recognize the turning of the earth that offers us comfort in the out of doors. May we use the coming days and months. Aren't we grateful for a little cooler weather? May we use this time in the coming months to consider nature that is abundantly surrounded by us. May we spend more time in nature. The ground we walk is sacred. This statement is from 365 Days of Walking the Red Road. The soil you see is not ordinary soil. It is the dust of the blood, the flesh, and the bones of our ancestors. You will have to dig through the surface before you can find nature's earth, as the upper portion is crow. The land as it is my blood and my dead. It is consecrated. That was Reno Crow from the 19th century. As you all saw, we are traversing the terrain that the Tocobaga Indians, and forgive me if I'm massacring that word. Jay, what is the word? Tocobaga, thank you. May we remember the Tocobaga every time we step on the ground. To remember is the goal this morning. That is to recall that, as Christian theologian Richard Baer Jr. says in a text titled The Sacred Earth, the earth does not belong to us, but we belong to her. She has stories to tell and lessons to teach. Here is one example of the lesson, the wisdom perhaps, inherent in a creature that shares the earth with us. It is a story of how even the light from the moon is borrowed riding on the back of a turtle. Maybe some of you have heard this. Many years ago, soon after I moved to the North Country, this is by a series of readings by Kaplow and Cohen in Wild Branch, an anthology of nature and environmental writing. Some indigenous cultures in North America correlate each moon on a turtle's back with a natural event or with something to do outdoors at that time of year. So he was told by friends of the Abenaki and the Mohawk descent that all turtles, every turtle, has 13 scales on their backs, and that each scale represents one of the moons we see throughout the year. My training as a scientist prompted me to search for proof among the shells of turtles from around the world. To my amazement, everything from giant leatherback sea turtles, which can weigh up to 1,500 pounds, to our familiar painted turtles, have 13 scales or scutes on their back. September's moon is the corn maker from the Abenaki. Wild rice gathering moon, Santee, Dakota. Moon of the black buffalo calf, Aglala, Lakota. Since there are 12 lunar cycles plus an extra 11 or so days in each solar year, a 13th month comes around about every 3 years as reckoned by the sun. This is the big moon to the Abenaki. The Maliseet of northern Maine and the maritime provinces know the moon as Pegos, he who borrows or begs light from the sun. Scientific knowledge and indigenous wisdom seem to converge on a terrapin's carapace. We have a loyalty to the land, to cycles in nature, and to the interconnected web of life. In Conversation is Good Work, Wendell Berry, who spoke at our General Assembly one year, Wendell Berry wrote, "And the real name of our connection to this everywhere different and differently named earth is work. The name of our proper connection to the earth is good work. It honors the source of its materials. It honors the place where it is done. It honors the art by which it is done. It honors the thing that it makes and the user of the made thing." His point is to consume wisely. It means to consume with care. Those words are attributed, or the following words are attributed to Native American Noah South. "This we know, the earth does not belong to us, we belong to the earth. This we know, all things are connected, like the blood that unites one family. All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons and daughters of the earth. We did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand in it. Whatever we do to the earth, we do to ourselves. This we know." So I began this message talking about corn and squash and beans. Maybe some of you love Mary Oliver's work as much as I do. In our Unitarian Universalist denomination, our congregations, we recognize that our faith is not dead, that we continue to be open to revelation, and sometimes it's through the words of poets, prophets that have lived in the past. But Mary Oliver was so powerful. In a poem titled Beans, maybe some of you gardeners can relate, she said, "They're not like peaches or squash. Plumpness isn't for them. They like being lean, as if for the narrow path. The beans themselves sit quietly inside their green pods. Instinctively, one picks with care, never tearing down the fine vine, never not noticing the crisp bodies or feeling their willingness for the pot, for the fire. I have thought sometimes that something, I can't name it, watches as I walk the rows, accepting the gift of their lives to assist mine. I know what you think. This is foolishness. They're only vegetables. Even the blossoms which they begin are small and pale, hardly significant," she wrote. Our hands, our minds, our feet hold more intelligence. With this I have no quarrel. But listen to this. The last line is, "What about virtue?" Unitarian Universalists are virtuous people, right? We try to make a difference with our social justice petitions, advocating for clean water initiatives by our local government. The leaders in our local government are pushed to hold these leaders accountable regarding recycling, etc. As I think about honoring the first peoples that roamed our land before we ever set foot here, I worry that our actions won't be enough. I resonate with this quote by Christy Kimball in a piece called The Dirty Life. When we would talk about our future in private, I asked Mark, her spouse, if he really thought we had a chance, if everything we do right now to stop contributing to the demise of the planet, if we will make a difference, if it's soon enough. Of course, he'd say, and anyway, it didn't matter if this venture failed. In his view, we were already a success because we were doing something. doing something hard, and it was something that mattered to us. You don't measure things like that with words like success and failure, he said. Satisfaction comes from trying hard things and going on to the next hard thing, regardless of the outcome. What mattered was whether or not you were moving in the direction you thought was right. She said, "This sounds extremely fishy to me." I don't know, I've thought about this. You've heard it before. We plant a tree not counting on us being here when it becomes huge with a trunk this big. We plant the tree because we have hope in the future. We have faith that that tree will be there to shade somebody who needs to be shaded. So I'm going to close with a responsive reading. I'm asking you to help. When I raise my hands, please say, "Now our minds are one." However, before I go on, let me explain. This reading comes from braiding sweetgrass again. I thought because we began with Dr. Kimmer, we could end with her. So Dr. Kimmer told this story about her daughter at school. And the school teacher called Barbara, Robin, and said, "Your daughter refuses to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance." I think the girl was in 5th grade, maybe. So she said, "Well, I'll go in and see what's going on." And the daughter said, "You know, my allegiance is to Earth. I have trouble pledging my allegiance, and I know this is controversial, but there's a little 5th grader. If we live in a land of freedom, the 5th grader can be in the room and choose, especially if she's Native American, right?" So the teacher in the school said, "Well, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we also do this every day. One grade chooses to read this prayer." She shared that the school week begins and ends not with the Pledge of Allegiance, but with the Thanksgiving address, a river of words as old as the people themselves, known more accurately in the Onondaga nations as the words that come before all else. This ancient order of protocol sets gratitude at its highest priority. The gratitude is directed straight to the ones who share their gifts with the world. So get ready. Today we have gathered, and when we look upon the face around us, we see that the cycles of life continue. We have been given the duty to live in balance and harmony with each other and all living things. So now let us bring our minds together as one as we give greetings and thanks to each other as people. Now our minds are as one. With one mind, we honor and thank all the food plants we harvested from the garden, especially the 3 sisters who feed the people with such abundance. Since the beginning of time, the grains, the vegetables, the beans, and the fruit have helped people survive. Many other living things draw strength from them as well. We gather together in our minds all the plant foods and send them our greeting and thanks. Now our minds are one. We put our minds together as one and thank all the birds who move and fly about over our heads. The Creator gave them the gift of beautiful songs. Each morning, they greet the day and with their songs remind us to enjoy and appreciate life. The eagle was chosen to be their leader and to watch over the world. To all the birds, from the smallest to the largest, we send our joyful greetings and thanks. Now our minds are one. Perhaps you might consider using these words at the beginning of your holiday meals in the future. Blessed be. Thank you for considering my message this morning.